So hello everyone, and you're all very welcome to the launch of Start Here, a social media campaign to empower college students and staff with basic information to respond to disclosures of sexual violence. I'm Dr. Charlotte McIver, and I'm one of the co-leads of NUI Galway's Active Consent, and we are delighted to be presenting this campaign in partnership with the Union of Students in Ireland and Galway Rape Crisis Centre. This is a campaign born out of a desire to act, to give our students and staff practical tools for supporting survivors of sexual violence and harassment, and builds on ongoing work that we've done with both the Union of Students in Ireland and Galway Rape Crisis Centre. Over the next hour here, you're going to hear about the campaign, what we're going to be offering you, the background to the work that we're doing. We'll hear from Minister Simon Harris, President Ciarán hÓgartaigh from National University of Ireland, Galway, representatives from the Union of Students in Ireland, the Galway Rape Crisis Centre, and two of our student union welfare reps from around the country, Athlone and NUI Galway. We hope we leave you inspired, ready to act, and to share this message over the next 8 weeks. So I'm going to first, we are going to show you the very first video in the campaign that has been released today to hopefully express something of the energy and the message that we're sending out and how we're trying to deliver it to people around the country. So now over to Alex Black to tell us what we are going to do over the next 8 weeks with prompts such as what you just saw. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you everyone very much for joining. So a little bit about what you can expect from the next 8 weeks of our campaign in partnership with Union of Students in Ireland and Galway Rape Crisis Centre. So basically, what we're going to look at for the next 8 weeks will be the basic do's and don'ts of receiving a disclosure. We know that receiving a disclosure can be quite overwhelming and it can be quite tough. So what we're going to do over the next 8 weeks is break down what you can do and what you shouldn't do whenever you're receiving a disclosure. We'll also have some key information on support services and how to access them nationally and what's available for survivors of sexual assault. We'll have some current research statistics on college students' experiences of sexual violence and harassment from our Sexual Experiences Survey in partnership with the Union of Students in Ireland. There will also be open access to the Active Consent self-guided 45-minute e-learning module on consent, sexual violence and harassment, which you'll be able to access on the Start Here campaign page, both on the NUI Galway website and also on the Union of Students in Ireland website. You'll also have the opportunity to access some online student-tailored disclosure training by the Galway Rape Crisis Centre, which we're absolutely delighted to be offering people over the next 8 weeks. And the dates for that will be Thursday, the 25th of March and Wednesday, the 14th of April for more in-depth disclosure training with the Galway Rape Crisis Centre. And online and our social media will have ongoing interactive content diving deeper into all of the information in detail, what we're going to be offering for the next 8 weeks. So lots to dive into with Instagram quizzes, polls, other forms of direct engagement. And you could even use our new Instagram GIFs on your Instagram stories, which we're delighted to be launching today.
Thanks so much, Alex. So we'll return to the calls to action at the end of the presentation. We'll provide those URLs for people, and you can also access them by following us or our partners on social media for the campaign. But this hopefully gives you an idea of what is the ambition, the scope, and some of the resources available. I'm delighted to welcome next to this event through the form of a video, our very proactive, very vocal Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation, and Science, Minister Simon Harris, who has been absolutely a guiding light, a leading voice, a tireless advocate in the field of sexual violence and harassment, and tackling this issue on college campuses through a student and staff-centered approach. So I'm going to go ahead and share this video here in a moment, so bear with me.
The Start Here campaign is a powerful and proactive tool in educating staff and students on what to do when someone tells them they've been a victim of sexual harassment or sexual violence. Start Here offers the basic do's and don'ts of receiving a disclosure and key information on what support services exist. To be a trusted friend or colleague comes great responsibility, and it's important that you know what to do when you're faced with such difficult information. My department is determined to tackle sexual harassment and sexual violence. We're working together with higher education institutions to ensure we create that culture of zero tolerance. Staff and students are entitled to a safe environment to study and work in, free from harassment or violence. I really want to thank NUI Galway's Active Consent team for being such leaders in this field. To find out more, go to @ActiveConsent. The Start Here.
And thanks to Minister Harris for that participation in this launch, and he sends his regrets for not being able to be here with us today. So next, we're going to go over to President Ciarán hÓgartaigh from National University of Ireland, Galway, who too has been a tireless supporter of the Active Consent Project since very soon after joining NUI Galway, and he currently has the capacity of leading in the Irish University Association as president of NUI Galway. So President hÓgartaigh, you're very welcome, and thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks, Charlotte. So just to echo the Minister's support and encouragement in this context, and I'd like to particularly thank all our colleagues both at NUI Galway and throughout the third level sector for work in this regard, and all our students as well, because I think one of the challenges of respect, which is a central value of NUI Galway, is this is a responsibility of us all. So respect is not for somebody else, it's our responsibility. And in the context of the consent framework and the launch of this particular campaign today, it's a particularly important occasion for us in encouraging and in educating with regard to respect and consent, and in really tackling sexual harassment, sexual violence, which has no place on university campuses, no place among our student community, no place in our society. And I think it's really important that we have proactive engagement in that regard. And I welcome the opportunity, therefore, to speak to you today with that in mind. It's particularly significant that this particular programme, though it starts at NUI Galway, has national reach and reputation, encouraging all staff and students to be part of this particular programme. It starts here, and Start Here is a particularly important part of the engagement, as was mentioned, over the next number of weeks. Charlotte mentioned I'm chair of the Irish University Association, particularly pleased to be here and to welcome you in that context as well, because there are 21 of 23 of Ireland's higher education institutions which are engaged with the Active Consent programme. And we hope to achieve measurable online engagement nationally with this campaign from all our third level institutions. We hope that you, together, people here on this particular seminar, this particular launch, will amplify this aim and call on everyone to become involved and notify their student bodies of this message through as many channels as possible, because it's really important to get this message out. One of the key calls to action of this campaign is also for students and staff to access the Active Consent e-learning module, Sexual Violence and Harassment, Supporting Yourself and Peers and Your Peers. And it's particularly important, I think, in this context, that we are all learning institutions and we have a role to therefore educate as well as to act. And this particular module is important as a self-guided and self-contained 45-minute experience, We feel that taking the e-learning module is the hardest call to action in the campaign, so a particular mention of engagement with this part of Start Here and the uniqueness of this resource based on Irish data from our joint sectoral experience survey with USI will be particularly helpful, and there's a preview of the model available online. I'd particularly like to encourage you to, and a call to action in various elements of this particular campaign. Follow Active Consent as the lead partner in campaign and social media and share the campaign posts. Active Consent at NUI Galway and at Active Consent. Tag posts you make here about the Start Here campaign, hashtag Start Here and hashtag I Believe Survivors. Download the card and pass it on to, or request physical copies of the card to be passed on within your institution or to colleagues, students, or within your friend group or within your peer group. And use our social media and to show your support for the Start Here campaign. And that, as I mentioned, is available on Instagram. And finally, take the e-learning module and spread the word to your friends and your colleagues and your peers. This is a particularly important campaign. Start Here starts here. And I think I'm particularly pleased therefore to launch it because it is part of a program of responsibility, a program of education, a program of taking responsibility for us all for supporting each other, defending the right to a safe environment, a particularly important and profound right in the university sector for our students and for society more generally. And that particular campaign starts here. Thank you very much, Caoimhín Mac.
Thank you very much, President hÓgartaigh. And next, I'm going to welcome to the launch my colleagues and co-leads in Active Consent, Dr. Siobhan O'Higgins and Padraig McNeila, who will share with you a bit of the research background and how this campaign is building actively on data that we learned through our survey in partnership with Union of Students in Ireland, as well as how the campaign is fitting into the wider body of work that Active Consent engages in. So you're very welcome, Padraig and Siobhan.
Thanks, Charlotte. So I'm just going to speak for a few minutes first, and then Siobhan is going to follow up talking about how the disclosure piece, the Start Here campaign, fits in with the wider range of activities that we're doing this spring. So the Start Here campaign, I think one of the most important kind of impetus for it was the sexual experiences survey that we conducted last year. This time last year, we were just doing our data collection, and that was a partnership between ourselves and USI. So looking at some of the statistics from that survey, we had a sample of over 6,000 college students who completed the full survey. We asked them a range of different questions and topics, because one of the most important gaps really from the perspective of the consent framework and implementation is data, and data across the board. So in terms of people's experiences of sexual violence, harassment, their attitudes to consent, rape myths, their understanding of services and supports in their college and so forth. What we do with this type of survey is take a campus climate approach. So let's start then with one of the pieces of information that we got. What percentage of students said that they had experienced completed oral, vaginal or anal penetration as a result of incapacitation or force or threat of force? Now, that's a really specific definition. If we zoom out a little bit, we can also see that, for example, 27% of male students said they had some unwanted sexual touching, completed or attempted penetration, 52% of females. But when we narrow in on something that we would really understand in the context of rape, we can see that the figure there is 29% of female students, 10% of male students, 1 in 10 male students, and 28% of non-binary identifying students. So that's one of our hard statistics, if you like. It's very harsh. It's very, we can understand the difficulties that would go with that experience. But one of the practical issues is then in terms of disclosure, how many of those students had not disclosed to another person? So now we're able to identify one of the key consequences and implications that perhaps we could do something about. So 35% of female students had not disclosed what had happened to them to another person before taking our survey. Half of the male students, and again, a quarter of the non-binary students. So now let's see a little bit more of what we can do with a campus climate approach and collecting data of this kind. So sticking with that group, the 29%, the 28%, the 10%. Now let's home in on male students in particular. So as we just saw, 49% of those male students had not disclosed, 51 had disclosed. Who are they telling? This is really informative in terms of the disclosure campaign planning. Most of the time they're telling a peer, actually rather seldom telling a member of college staff. So that's telling me we need to make college staff more aware of disclosure as an issue. And we also need to ensure that peers are prepared to receive that disclosure and to behave in a really kind of supportive way. Then in terms of the people who did not, what are some of the barriers? And a lot of them are coming into internalized stigma and the belief that maybe other people aren't going to be supportive. Let's just take a look at the equivalent female statistics then. So as we said, 2/3 had told somebody about this, 1/3 had not, approximately. Again, very similar patterns. So when people are disclosing, really for the most part, they're disclosing to a peer. It's seldom enough that they're saying that they're disclosing to a member of college staff. Back to that key lesson, we have to ensure staff members are well prepared and open to that conversation. And we have to ensure that peers know what to do or feel a little bit more empowered. And there are barriers then to overcome in terms of people's perceptions of shame or embarrassment and other issues that we're not addressing here, like people's overall understanding of sexual violence and harassment or the perception that it's a crime or not. Just my last piece here is in terms of turning to sexual harassment and people's responses to an example of sexual harassment that they told us about on the survey. So in the case of sexual harassment, what percentage of students told the person to stop? So 40% of students told the person to stop. That figure was highest for female students, 46% of female students, 30% of male students. What percentage of people engaged in more of an avoidance response? 37% of students engaged in an avoidance response. Again, highest for female students, 41%. And also queer or other sexual minority students, 47% of those avoided the person as much as possible. Another response that isn't proactive and maybe goes back to these issues about stigma and beliefs, 30% of students said that they ignored the person and did nothing after the case of sexual harassment. So that could be sexist harassment, it could be comments, it could be sexual comments or persistently trying to achieve intimacy with the person. And another way that people maybe deflect or don't feel comfortable engaging, and the whole area then of peer support, disclosure, openness, and being able to move into that category of feeling confident about telling the person to stop. 24% of students said, well, I treated it like a joke or I tried to minimize it. And the highest rate there was for male students. 35% of male students said, look, I tried to minimize it and treat it like a joke. But obviously we think genuinely, maybe they would prefer to feel empowered to take a more proactive option. And then the issue about asking someone for advice or support, which is directly connected to disclosure, just 14% of students who had experienced the example of sexual harassment, they told us on the survey, said that they had asked somebody for advice or support. So it's again telling us a very applied finding from our survey, disclosure, being able to speak up is a big topic in terms of cultural change on our campuses, both for students, peers, and staff members. And the final report, again, kind of in coinciding with our finding overall, just 35% or so of students had awareness of supports and services, complaints mechanisms in colleges. Well, just 4% of students who reported an incident of sexual harassment on the survey said that they had actually reported the person involved to the college.
So I'm going to look at some of our resources that we've been developing since COVID. We began a 3-stage active consent programme with proactive resources to support both students and staff. And many of you were involved in rolling out the online workshop to over 16,000 first-year students. So we couldn't have done it without you. So that's our stage 1 in 21 different colleges into 2020, and it continues into 2021. The 30-minute online workshop means that everybody who attended it knows the law and what non-consent might look like, and that consent is ongoing, mutual and freely given. Plus they know that their options, if they or a friend have ever been a victim of sexual violence. And as one student in the feedback said, great, everyone gets the same information so that everyone knows that everyone knows. And the same goes for our stage 2 and stage 3. Stage 2 began last summer with the development of the e-learning module with more in-depth information, which is now easy to access, and already students in several colleges have engaged with it. Starts Here is a wonderful example of our social media and creative content program, which has been ongoing since 2019. Start Here is relevant for both students and staff. So I'm just going to mention briefly our resources for staff that are in development and already available. We're looking to change the campus culture by increasing awareness for all staff. For example, the disclosure cards work for both staff and students, and has information on the supports that are specific to each college. Then we're trying to educate many, and there's training for those who wish to use more in-depth resources. So to our last slide, we can see some of the resources that are available for staff from this spring. And if you see, so we have the 15-minute staff training animation, we have briefings for college leadership, we have a GRCC 9-hour training, and then finally we have the professional development module, which started in February and runs till June, and will most likely be run again later this year. So that's what we have. So thank you. That's my bit done.
Thank you so much, Siobhan and Padraig, for putting it in that wider context and that careful work through the stats that lets us see the stakes of what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish concretely. And for those of you, there'll be an opportunity to learn how to get some of these delivered to you following the launch today, but this is then what the disclosure card looks like. So I'm next delighted to welcome to the launch the current Union of Students in Ireland Vice President for Welfare and Equality, Claire hÓgartaigh. She is an NUI Galway alum, where I got to know her as a tireless champion for the rights and experiences of students across the campus, and a particularly strong voice and leader in the area of consent and sexual violence education. It was a delight to partner with Union of Students in Ireland in this campaign. Indeed, it would not have been possible without their involvement, their insight, their partnership on the sexual experiences survey. So Claire, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone. It is a great honour to be able to be here and speak at this important launch today. My name is Claire hÓgartaigh and I'm the Vice President for Welfare with the Union of Students in Ireland. For some people who might not know what USI is, but USI is the National Students' Union, one of the largest membership organisations across the country. We represent over 374,000 students in the north and south of Ireland. USI and students' unions have been very strong and vocal on the need for consent education and a zero tolerance approach to ending sexual violence and harassment in higher education institutions. We are delighted to be a partner in the Start Here campaign with Active Consent and the Galway Rape Crisis Centre. Active Consent have done a phenomenal job in the planning and coordination of this campaign, alongside everything else that they have spearheaded over the years. Their hard work and commitment needs to be acknowledged. This campaign aims to educate staff and students on how to best support someone who is disclosing an instance of sexual violence or harassment. This campaign is a continuation from the Sexual Experiences Survey report that Active Consent and USI launched together last year. It was found that 79% of students disclosed to their friends. This one finding in itself speaks volumes, and it emphasises the significant role friends and peers in supporting survivors of sexual violence and harassment during a disclosure. We can never underestimate the influence a positive disclosure response has on the person disclosing. You could be the first person a survivor of sexual violence or harassment discloses to. What we say, how we say it, our body language and tone determines how the person feels and the potential next steps that are taken. If it is a positive experience, it might offer comfort, support, and encourage them to reach out for professional support or even feel empowered to disclose again or make a formal report. However, if it's a negative experience, it might evoke feelings of shame, of self-blame, and could silence them in speaking out again. This is why education on this topic is imperative. Our initial reaction to a disclosure might be of hurt, frustration, and disbelief. When the people we care about are hurting, we automatically default to anger, wanting to know who the perpetrator is and how it happened. You might want to ask further questions to understand the situation better, but that doesn't always help the person you're trying to support. It's important to remain calm, collected, supportive, non-judgmental, and compassionate. It's always best to provide a space where the person disclosing can openly express how they're feeling and what they want to say. The way in which we respond is of the utmost importance. It takes a lot of courage and bravery for a survivor of sexual violence and harassment to disclose. So the best thing you can do is listen and be as supportive, compassionate, and non-judgmental as you can be. It can be a little bit overwhelming when you want to help, but you don't know how to. So this campaign offers the skill set, the understanding, and the phrasing to use and avoid. The downloadable booklet, the short videos, and e-learning module have been developed to guide you in your learning journey. Education has the influence to inform our thinking and in turn our behaviour. So we still have a long way to go in creating a truly supportive, non-judgmental and compassionate culture, which does not victim blame or shame around sexual violence and harassment. While a lot of work has been done in the area of consent education and delivering initiatives to prevent and eradicate sexual violence on our campuses, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We have the preventative consent initiatives and surveys to measure how many people have been affected, but we are lacking a little bit in the aftercare and support offered after an instance of sexual violence and harassment has taken place. Rape crisis centres, support networks and NGOs are the ones who've done Trojan work on this topic. While their work is paramount, we need to extend the compassion and support given by all people in our communities. The everyday average person should have the basic understanding on how to support someone in the event of a disclosure. The more people who are informed and educated, the more supportive and compassionate as a society we become. We already know that sexual violence is a prominent issue, and we know from the sexual experiences survey that 29% of females, 10% of males, and 28% of non-binary students reported non-consensual penetration by incapacitation, force, or threat of force. But we also know that 49% of males, 35% of females, and 25% of non-binary students who experienced non-consensual penetration did not tell anyone about the incident before taking place in the survey. And of those students who did not disclose, 54% of females and 37% of males and 33% of non-binary students said they did not report the incident because they thought it wasn't serious enough. There is a reason why people are too afraid to disclose, report, or talk about their experience to loved ones. We need to ensure that those who have experienced sexual violence and harassment can disclose and report without being met with judgment, blame, or shame. No one should ever feel alone, ashamed, isolated, or question if the assault was serious enough to disclose or report it in the first instance. If survivors of sexual violence and harassment don't feel confident in being met with support, no judgment and compassion during the disclosure, then that falls on us. It says a lot about us as people and us as a society, so we must do better. Start Here has the potential to make a long-term impact on the environment and culture we foster for survivors of sexual violence and assault. If this campaign educates a few people on how to support someone in the event of a disclosure, and in turn allows survivors to feel more supported and understood, we have succeeded. We never fully know the extent of which our actions and words impact on someone. So let's actively try to better ourselves and expand our knowledge and skills to ensure our interactions with others are as uplifting and positive as they can be. You never know, that one disclosure could change the direction of a person's life. And we have a long way to go, but every journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that step is by starting here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claire, for a really powerful and stirring set of remarks. Our great appreciation to you for joining us today. We're now going to go over to Michelle Caulfield, who will be speaking on behalf of the Galway Rape Crisis Centre, as Claire so accurately identified, on the front lines of this battle, not only now, but for decades, and not only in Galway, of course, but all over the country. Our colleagues in Rape Crisis Centre networks, as well as NGOs, other support services, are on the front line in working with our survivors in this country, as well as supporting those who have been involved in a disclosure process. We've been working with Galway Rape Crisis Centre quite closely within active consent, and we are absolutely delighted to be welcoming Michelle here to talk today about the campaign and the work of Galway Rape Crisis Centre. You're very welcome.
Hello there. Thanks, Charlotte, very much. Claire, you did an amazing job, a great advocate for disclosure training there, and something we feel very, very strongly about. So I'm the head of education and training at the centre, and for 40 years, Galway and other rape crisis centres around indeed the world have been hosting and taking care of survivors on the darker end, supporting them through the post-sexual violent experience. So we do know the importance of disclosure and how best to do that. And we are absolutely delighted to take part in a huge step in decreasing the tolerance that we have for sexual violence in society and in our culture. So we will be training staff, and absolutely delighted to be training students, as we know that 94% of survivors will turn to other peers and other students, half of them never actually getting the help that's needed. Long-term effects of sexual violence go on for lifelong and into actually other generations. So I think it's really key that we do this well. It can be done well. It's not a difficult process to train, upskill, create the awareness and knowledge that is needed, and the Active Consent have done an amazing job thus far, and we are very happy to partner them going forward in all aspects of training and education needed. So that's all I have to say. Claire did an amazing job, so I don't need to repeat anything. The stats are all there, 1 in 4, with 50% not disclosing for all the various reasons, and there are many that people don't disclose sexual violence. So we're delighted to be here and to face down the sexual harassment, which is the foundation in which sexual violence grows. So we're meeting that, getting on top of it, and creating education, awareness, and how to face it, and not to be a bystander in that new piece in society. So delighted, Charlotte, to be with you again and you know, contributing to this amazing step in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. And we'll give information again at the end about how people will be able to contact us in order to avail of the staff training or the 2 student sessions, which again, mark the calendars, the 25th of March, 14th of April, and you'll be able to sign up on those through Eventbrite. And those are open to students all over the country. As you know, one of the benefits maybe of the pandemic is that we have the facility to do the online training. So thanks so much, Michelle. Okay, so next we are going to hear from 2 different student vice presidents for welfare at 2 different student unions, one from Athlone IT, and Niall Naughton, who I'll welcome here first, and second, Roisin Loughlin of NUI Galway. As this is a campaign that is about speaking and reaching out to both students and staff, we wanted those voices to be accurately and as diversely represented as possible from across the country, as well as within our institution. So Niall, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here this morning. My name is Niall Naughton, and I am the Vice President for Welfare and Equality at AIT Students' Union in Athlone Institute of Technology. Over several years in third level education, I have unfortunately encountered many disclosures from both male and female peers, to all of which I was not fully educated or equipped to handle. What if I was saying something wrong? What if I was giving the wrong advice? Maybe I should just let them cry on my shoulder. Sure, what else can I do? These were the questions I was asking myself in each moment of a disclosure. Luckily, As a social care practice student, I had developed some useful skills to handle disclosure situations in a respectful and supportive manner. However, many others don't. Since starting my role as welfare officer in Athlone Institute of Technology, I have been extremely grateful to have given the opportunity to learn all about active consent and meet the amazing team of people driving this key initiative. The opportunity then arose for me to attend the active consent facilitator training alongside my colleagues, which to date was probably the most beneficial training we have ever attended. We felt empowered, we felt motivated, and we felt like starting these workshops on our campuses as soon as possible. And we knew how fundamental these workshops were in tackling sexual violence and harassment within our student cohort. What surprised us more was the data highlighting the need for active consent workshops and to be integrated into our education networks across Ireland. The figures revealing that 77% of females, 70% of men, and 90% of non-binary students have experienced some form of sexual harassment since starting college. Those figures are extremely worrying and is the prime reason we are all here this morning. After seeing those figures, I wondered, what if every one of those students were to disclose to a staff member, friend, or a family? Would they get the right and appropriate response? Would they be offered the right support? Would that person receiving the disclosure be equipped to even respond to that disclosure? For survivors, the first experience of disclosure is so important. Getting a negative reaction from the person they tell can severely affect how they feel about what happened and how they feel or how they deal with the aftermath of the incident. Like I said at the start, I was lucky to have some knowledge around disclosure. Otherwise, I would still be questioning how I handled those situations and what the outcome may have been. This morning marks a significant milestone and opens a door to a more educated, safe and supportive society when it comes to tackling sexual violence and harassment disclosures. In my opinion, this Start Here campaign will tackle the barriers and those wanting to disclose. It will educate our society in responding appropriately to a disclosure. It will create awareness and dissolve the stigma around sexual violence and harassment disclosures, and it will create a society where people can disclose without hesitation. It will also signpost the relevant services and supports and ensure survivors are protected and safeguarded after disclosing. I am thrilled and I'm so looking forward to the next 8 weeks and what this campaign has in store. I want to take this opportunity to commend all the team and everyone that has been involved in the development of this fantastic initiative. Go raibh.
Thank you so much, Niall, for those words and for sharing your own experience of where you started in your understanding or engagement with these issues and where you've grown to through your practice. And I think this is a moment to say, or to highlight again, that this campaign is Start Here. It's giving us the tools to start to begin this inquiry. It's one stepping stone on a longer journey of education that you've animated for us so beautifully through your own journey there. Last but not least, in terms of the speakers coming today to this launch, we have Roisin Ní Lachlan, who is the Vice President for Equality and Welfare at NUI Galway. Roisin, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Charlotte. So Boilem Tosu Tree Buihas La Active Consent as Curia Horch doing you. As more an honour do Aglort and Shaw and you. So I just want to start by thanking Active Consent for inviting me here to speak today at this brilliant campaign launch. So consent isn't something that's talked about enough, if at all, in schools and in society in general. Sex isn't talked about, consent isn't talked about, it's completely brushed under the carpet. And still over a decade after the last mother and baby home closed its doors, society is still pushing the stigmatisation and the shame that has existed in this country for too long. Dealing with disclosure in an empathetic way is so important, especially in schools and student unions and higher education institutions. I know myself and many others have heard too many stories of our peers' experiences of sexual assault, and many of us don't realise that it was assault until we're much older. And I know from first-hand experience growing up in Antrim the stigma surrounding it and how rife it is. Yet, in my experience, I was the one vilinised. I was the one shamed, the victim in the situation. I was slut-shamed and ostracised while the perpetrator was praised. And at 17 years old, I would sit in my room alone for days and cry with no support from anyone except my best friend, which is why disclosure is so important. If someone comes to you and discloses, you have to be there and you have to deal with it in an empathetic way and the right way. If you went into schools and saw the attitudes and the way in which sexual assault is dealt with, it would be the step-by-step guide on how not to approach disclosure. My experience has been a driving force for me ever since to stand up for survivors, to use my voice to push for things like consent and sex ed. And I know not everyone is in the position to do that just yet or ever, and that's okay as well. Because it's not our fault. And if I could go back and tell 17-year-old myself that, I would. Whether it's the way the mainstream media portrays women, Megan Fox, Britney Spears, Janet Jackson, whether it's music videos such as Blurred Lines, whether it's classmates in school casually slut-shaming, casually sending nudes into group chats. This is all things that we have to challenge. The shame has become normalised in society. And along with the onslaught of brave people coming forward with stories of abuse and of survival, there also came an onslaught of something else, victim blaming. What were they wearing? How drunk were they? Why didn't they fight back? And it's on all of us to challenge this and to call it out when we see it. No one should have to go through that. And it's so important that people are equipped with the skills to deal with disclosure and make people feel safe and comfortable. And data has suggested that anywhere from 30 to 80% of survivors develop PTSD. And I know we saw the statistics earlier, but just take a moment to think about that statistic. We already know those statistics exist. Most of us have lived experience, but the challenge now is to make sure, as Claire said, that victims feel empowered enough to speak out and to talk to someone in the first place. And when they do, they're listened to and they're supported. And I think we are finally starting to see steps of change in the positive direction. And it's with the amazing work, the amazing campaigns like this one, the amazing work of active consent and rape crisis centres that this change is beginning to come to the fore. One of the most important things that you can do when someone discloses sexual assault to you is to be there for them, to make sure that they're okay, to listen to them. No judge, no shame, no judgment, no shame, no blame. So the work that has been done is incredible, and I'm so excited to be able to play a part in this campaign to raise awareness about the skills to deal with disclosure and to fully be there for survivors. But where can you start? Start by being there. Let your friends know that you're there for them. Let people know that you have a judgment-free and an empathetic approach to disclosure. Because at the end of the day, you really never know what anyone is going through, so just be cinealta. And I know it was said, but it can be tough to know how to respond in the moment. It's tough to be faced with that. So start here. Start by supporting and sharing this campaign. Share it with the people that aren't here today, because that's the people that we need to be targeting. And I'll finish with saying this. This isn't going to end tomorrow. It's not going to end next week. It might take a while, but in a chéile, hÓgartaigh na Caisleáin, Rome wasn't built in a day. Yeah, Gur Milgov.
Thank you, Roisin, for, like Niall, sharing your story, sharing such a deep and a painful story in that moment to get us again to the heart of what this campaign is about. The very candid facing up to the hard work that is not going to be accomplished through a card, through a day, but we have to start somewhere to keep changing and pushing and shifting on those statistics. So thank you for the gift of your story, of your call to action for us. So that brings us now to the part of the launch where we will summarize again for you the call to action here before concluding with some thanks to the wider team. So I'm going to invite Alex back on here as I bring up our PowerPoints here to leave you with the tangibles, as hopefully you have been inspired and excited to get involved, to reach the people, as Roisin hits it nail on the head, who aren't here today, who also need to be part of the conversation, whether supported as survivors or given the tool to be able to hold someone else in that moment. So Alex, how can we get involved?
Now, so how you can get involved. You've heard from all our fantastic speakers. Thank you all so much. And you're thinking, how can I support this campaign as much as I humanly can? So the first thing you can do is follow Active Consent, Union of Students in Ireland, Galway Rape Crisis Centre, and share our campaign posts. And a special thanks to New World Associates for creating our fantastic campaign posts and videos, which you'll be seeing every 2 weeks for the next 8 weeks. They're absolutely fantastic. So that's the first thing you can do. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also explore the resources available on our campaign pages. So at nuigalway.ie/active-consent/start here, and also on activeconsent.usi.ie, where you'll find more information such as support systems, where you can report whether you want to consider reporting to, or if you want to send someone support services for the Gardaí, for the Rape Crisis Network, for a sexual assault treatment unit. All of our tips and all of our advice and all our resources will be there. And you can also, if you want to join in the conversation, you can use the hashtags for the campaign, #StartHere and #IBelieveSurvivors. And you can also use our social media gifts and stickers to show your support for the Start Here campaign, available on Instagram. Thank you once again to New World Associates for those fantastic assets. And you can also take the e-learning module and spread the word to your friends and our colleagues. So we've got the fantastic Active Consent e-learning module, all about sexual violence and harassment, and that goes into a fair bit more depth than we can online. So that's at activeconsent.usi.ie/training, and you can find that on the USI side as well.
And then if you have questions about how to make the most of your involvement, if you wanted to actually request the physical cards, despite our still phase 5 socially distanced world for now or for in the future, you can reach out to us at activeconsent@nuigalway.ie, and that will make its way back to Alex and ourselves. I want to speak, I suppose, directly to the staff and the student union leaders who may be trying to implement this campaign locally. The cards that are at the center of this campaign have the national level tips on here. The website goes into the regional detail about where you can access your local rape crisis center, where sexual assault treatment units are. But of course, campus to campus, or even from college to college within one higher education institution, may have different structures, supports, and so on. So you will have to do some work to connect the dots and to give reference to local resources when retweeting on your social media within your campus, when directing others to the e-learning module. And we have a 2-page document about how to best integrate or to work with the e-learning module, that for those who may be looking to adapt it into a module or as part of a campaign on campus can reach out to us to receive. I'm now at perhaps the trickiest, or maybe as well as most soul-fulfilling part, or one of the soul-fulfilling parts of this launch, which is to make sure that we go through a set of wider thanks here. So first of all, of course, the thanks again to the campaign partners here, the Union of Students in Ireland. You didn't get to hear today from Craig McHugh, who has also helped with us on the campaign management, Martina Ganoki, who is the PR representative for Union of Students in Ireland, and the hero, Ben Archibald, the general manager for USI, who made open access through the USI website to the e-learning module possible. So thank you. Thanks to our partners at Learning Rooms, who helped us create the e-learning module and indeed bring it to the world. For Galway Rape Crisis Centre, Amanda Cosgrove, who has been in on the campaign planning from the beginning of this. Thank you very much for all you've done for us. In the wider Active Consent team, we want to particularly highlight the work of Lorraine Burke, who has worked through the sexual experiences survey data in particular. So all those stats we're able to share, and which ground the campaign would not be possible without her support, as well as the support of Teresa O'Rourke, Maureen Heath, Kate Dawson, and others within the Active Consent team, Becky Connolly, who has co-led the Active Consent campaign here today. None of this would be possible without our funders. So thanks to Life's Too Good Foundation and Rethink Ireland for the funding, for the support, for NUI Galway as the third main funder, to the Higher Education Authority for your contribution to the creation of our e-learning module, and the Department of Education and Skills. But last, but certainly not least, thanks to all of you who have made the time to be here today, who have rolled out active consent programming, or that of other colleagues in the field, such as the UCC Bystander Intervention Program, the work of the National Women's Council of Ireland on ESHTA, and the It Stops Here campaign. We need all these voices. We need all this work to, as Roisin has said to us, keep pressing, keep pushing, keep spreading the knowledge, one card at a time, one conversation at the time, so we can end sexual violence and harassment, not only at our higher education institutions, but throughout Irish society, and support those who have been affected by it during their lifetime, which, whether or not you are a direct survivor, we have all been affected, knowing survivors, living through those ripple effects within generations and within the wider society. So thanks to all for being here today. We've had a question about whether slides can be shared from the presentation. You can write to us directly to ask for those slides, and we can share those with you. You can visit the campaign page to be able to download the tips card, access the e-learning module, and so on. We look forward to hearing from you about your thoughts about the launch today. We look forward to seeing and engaging with you as you amplify and roll out this campaign where you're at. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful day.